What if the respect you think you have is slowly slipping away without a single person saying a word? What if it's not the big mistakes, but the subtle, everyday habits you barely notice that are sabotaging how people see you? And what if removing these habits could unlock a level of trust, influence, and inner confidence you never thought possible? 4 awful habits that make people disrespect you. There's a silent currency that governs our relationships, our careers, and even our internal peace. Respect. It's not something we can demand. It's not something we're entitled to. Respect is earned through how we live, how we treat others, and how we carry ourselves when no one is watching. The ancient Stoics understood this better than most. They live not for status, but for virtue, not for applause, but for alignment with nature and reason. We often think of disrespect in terms of insults or obvious slights. But what if the true erosion of respect happens slowly, subtly, through habits we dismiss as harmless? What if the way we speak, listen, show up, or complain is quietly pushing people away and undermining our own self-respect in the process? The Stoics warn against such sleepwalking through life. Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations reminds us, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. That clarity of action, that moral seriousness, is the cornerstone of a life worthy of respect. This is not about perfection. It's about becoming intentional, because when we lose the respect of others, we often lose something deeper, the sense that our presence matters. But when we rebuild that foundation, when we clear out the habits that obscure our character, something remarkable happens. We begin to walk through the world with quiet authority. We become trustworthy. We become remembered. Here are 4 habits that quietly erode that foundation and the Stoic path to rise above them. 1. Gossip. The poison tongue of the unexamined life. Gossip is one of the most seductive and destructive habits a person can develop. On the surface, it feels harmless. Just words, just stories, just observations. But beneath the surface, gossip is a kind of spiritual decay. It is the act of feasting on someone else's imperfections in order to feel superior. It masquerades as bonding, but it isolates. It presents itself as honesty, but it is often cruelty in disguise. The Stoics had no patience for this kind of behavior. Epictetus warned us, if evil be spoken of you and it be true, correct yourself. If it be a lie, laugh at it. The true Stoic does not waste time dissecting the lives of others. Why? Because it is a distraction from self-mastery. Gossip reveals a restless, undisciplined mind, one that cannot sit still with its own thoughts. So it seeks entertainment in the misfortunes or failures of others. I recall a time when I thought gossip was harmless fun. I was younger, insecure, and eager to feel like I belonged. So I participated in the ritual of tearing others down when they weren't around. I laughed, I nodded, I contributed. But eventually, I noticed something. I didn't trust the people I gossiped with. And worse, I didn't like the person I was becoming. One day that cut deep, and it was true. Gossip didn't just hurt those I talked about. It corroded my integrity. It made my relationships shallower. It made my spirit smaller. So I stopped. I began practicing what the Stoics called enretia self-restraint. When others gossiped, I held my tongue. When invited to comment on someone's downfall, I chose silence or compassion. In time, something shifted. People began to trust me more. I found myself included in conversations of depth, not just drama. I began to rebuild my own dignity, one quiet moment at a time. Gossip is easy. Integrity is not. But the latter is where respect lives. 2. Unreliability, the quiet killer of trust. Reliability is one of the least glamorous but most powerful virtues a person can possess. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't shout. It doesn't seek attention, but it speaks volumes in the language of consistency. When you are reliable, people may not praise you often, but they trust you deeply. And that trust is the bedrock of respect. The Stoics saw reliability not just as a social virtue but as a moral imperative. Marcus Aurelius advised, do every act of your life as though it were the very last act of your life. That includes the small ones. Showing up on time, keeping your word, following through. These are not minor gestures. They are reflections of your character. I once had a pattern of overcommitting. I would agree to things out of guilt or people-pleasing, only to back out later, thinking a sincere apology will suffice. For a while, I convinced myself that my intentions mattered more than the outcomes. But over time, the cracks appeared. Friends stopped depending on me. Colleagues hesitated before assigning me important tasks. I was being seen not as malicious, but as unreliable. And in many ways, that was worse. A turning point came when a team I was part of lost a major opportunity because I missed a deadline. No excuses, just failure. My teammates were kind but disappointed, and I felt ashamed. That was when I began to understand that being reliable isn't about being perfect. It's about being steady, being there when it matters, being the kind of person whose actions align with their words. So I changed. I started saying no more often, but meant yes when I said it. I tracked commitment. I practiced the Stoic habit of preparation and foresight, and gradually people noticed. I was given greater responsibility, my relationships deepened. Most importantly, I began to respect myself more. Reliability is quiet, but it echoes loudly. It says, I am here. You can count on me. My word is weighty. And in a world full of noise and excuses, that weight is rare. That weight earns respect. 3. Interrupting. The ego's need to be heard. First, there's a subtle violence in interrupting. Not physical, but spiritual. It is the act of saying, pause your truth. Mine matters more. It doesn't always come from arrogance. Sometimes it comes from excitement or even empathy. But regardless of its root, the impact is the same. It makes others feel unseen. It severs the sacred flow of conversation. It centers you when true listening demands the opposite. Seneca wrote, it is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence. Yet in modern life, silence is often feared. We fill every gap, we rush to respond. We interrupt not just others, but the moment itself. And in doing so, we trade presence for performance. There was a moment that woke me up to this habit. A friend was sharing something deeply personal. His battle with anxiety, his daily struggle to function. Moved by his vulnerability, I interrupted with my own story, hoping to show understanding. But instead of gratitude, he looked at me with a kind of weary disappointment and said, can I finish? I had hijacked his moment, not out of cruelty, but out of ego. And that moment haunted me. I began to reflect on how often I did this in meetings, in conversations, even with strangers. I wasn't really listening. I was scanning for an entry point. And that, I realized, was a form of selfishness. Subtle but real. The Stoic path offers a radical antidote. Active, humble listening. Not listening to reply. Not listening to impress. Just listening. Letting others speak without haste or interruption, holding space, practicing what the Stoics called apatheia, a calmness of soul that allows others to be heard without interference. When I adopted this practice, the change was profound. People opened up more, conflicts dissolved, my conversations gained depth, and most of all, I became more attuned to others, to the moment, to myself. Interrupting is a habit of the untrained mind. Listening is the posture of the wise. If you seek respect, learn to wait, learn to witness, learn to let others be seen. 4. Complaining. The habit that weakens the spirit. Complaining is a subtle poison. It doesn't arrive with thunder, but with a sigh, a shrug, a sharp comment. It hides behind humor. It cloaks itself in realism. But underneath it is the voice of the defeated soul. Every complaint is a confession that we have forgotten our power, our responsibility, our perspective. The Stoics detested complaint. because it wastes the most precious thing we have, our focus. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. I used to be a master complainer. The weather, traffic, deadlines, people, nothing was safe from my commentary. I thought it made me sharp, insightful, honest. But over time, I saw what it really did. It made people weary. My energy repelled. My presence became heavy. A close friend finally told me with both love and weariness, you're starting to sound like someone who gave up. That broke me, but it also freed me. I realized that I had outsourced my power to complaint, so I took it back. I began practicing radical responsibility. When something bothered me, I asked, what can I do? What can I accept? What lesson is here? I began replacing complaints with gratitude. Not in a naive way, but as a way of remembering what was still beautiful, still working, still worth honoring. And slowly the respect returned not just from others, but from myself. I felt lighter, more grounded, more capable. Complaining had made me small. Ownership made me strong. To live without complaint is not to deny suffering. It is to face suffering with strength. And that strength, that quiet refusal to whine or wilt, commands the deepest kind of respect. Conclusion. Respect is a daily discipline of the soul. Respect is not a performance. It is not an achievement. It is a reflection of how you live when no one is watching. Gossip, unreliability, interrupting, complaining. These are not just social flaws. They are signs of a life drifting away from purpose. But the beauty of Stoic wisdom is this. We can always return. We can always begin again. When we clear these habits from our lives, we don't just gain the respect of others. We awaken a deeper respect for ourselves. We move from noise to clarity, from reaction to reason, from ego to essence. The path of the Stoic is narrow but noble. It demands vigilance, honesty, and discipline. But the reward is priceless. A life that commands respect, not through fear or fame, but through quiet virtue. And in a world starved for sincerity, that is the most powerful presence of all. So begin today. Clean one habit. Strengthen one virtue. Listen deeper. Speak with care. Act with consistency. And watch as your life transforms not into something louder, but into something worth listening to. Stay strong. Stay grounded. Remember, every small shift in your behavior, every choice to act with integrity, patience, and self-awareness is like placing a brick in the foundation of lasting respect. Build it with care, and it will carry you for a lifetime.